And then because we calve that bit later, we need to calve very compact, because if you don't, it's going to just calve and could drag out into May. So we try to have, hit the target of 90% calved in 6 weeks. You can't afford to carry passengers, exactly, that if there's any cow holding me back, I'm afraid now we have to have the talk of to drop her off the panel.
For the majority of herds, April is an important month in making sure the breeding season goes well. Irish seasonal calving herds need to calve compactly in order to maximise days in milk. Calving start date varies across the country and is something under consideration on some farms for 2026, where farmers have found they are starting earlier than they would like to and coming under pressure due to grass demand late in the first rotation. Today we're joined by Teagasc, Kerry Dairy Ireland Joint Programme Demonstration Farm Advisor Claire McAuliffe and one of the demonstration farms on the programme, Pa O'Hanlon. Pa is farming in Tarbert, County Kerry, and over the last few years has moved his calving start date from January out to mid-February to try to better align with the grass growth profile of his farm. Compact calving is critically important to Pa, so today we're going to discuss the way he ensures he hits 90% calved in 6 weeks each year. I started by asking Pa to tell us how the spring of 2025 has been for him.
In general, the spring went relatively okay. I had no real major issues this year, thank God. I had maybe 2 calls arrived from the vet with difficult calvings. We had one clinical case of milk fever. There was a couple of cases of mastitis, but nothing too serious. It seemed to clear up relatively quick once treated. And other than that, then we had 3 or 4 cows that got lame when they went out. But we kind of treated those, straight away. If there was any lame cows at all, we just treat them straight away, especially early in the year, so it doesn't set them back. But in general, it went fairly well. We had the cows out around the 3rd of March by day, and thanks be to God, they stayed out by day all of March. Usually they might have to come in at some stage, but the weather was good. And then we got them out by night towards the end of March, just because we didn't have enough grass really on the ground, so we had to supplement inside with silage and palm kernel for most of March up until we got them out.
Okay, so just I suppose give us an idea in terms of the calving rate then, Pa, and just also when did you actually start calving as well, just so that people are clear, we'll say, in terms of how you're fitting in with your grass and so forth there.
Okay, so we don't calve too early, and the whole idea of that is that we want to try and calve cows as close as possible to grass. So on paper, we were meant to start calving on the 14th of February this year, but our first calf arrived on the 6th of February, and we probably had maybe 10 or 11 cows calved by the 14th. And then because we calve that bit later, we need to calve very compact, because if you don't, it's going to just calve and could drag out into May. So we try to have, hit the target of 90% calved in 6 weeks, and by doing that, then you're getting the cows onto the grass early, and you're getting the milk in the tank as well, which is the main thing.
Okay, so you clearly hit that target, Pa, in 2024 anyway. Your 6-week calving rate was 97%. So there's something that you're doing that's lending to that, obviously. So explain what you do to make sure that you're getting the return in terms of that calving rate. And it is important for people to be very clear that and why you're so intent on getting it. In that, as you said, you've actually moved your calving date now as well over the last number of years, Pa, as well, in order to align it with the grass a little bit more. So just explain that, I suppose, maybe that journey that you came from maybe calving a few cows in January to not having anything calving in January at all, and what you do then in terms of that pre-breeding work to make sure that you keep the compactness that you have managed to deliver on.
Okay, yeah, so we used to, I suppose back along, we used to have always have a few cows calved in January, kind of maybe the last week of January and, early February. And what we found was that by the time we got the cows out to grass, that the cows, for want of a better word, they were gone stale. The protein was like hitting the floor. They were just, and I suppose milk yield as well was dropping because they were on silage for too long. And you would have always we'd have a certain number of bales or whatever of good quality silage, but that you could never seem to have enough. It would always run out, and you'd end up feeding them lower quality silage then, and that wouldn't help either with your percentages. So we decided, look, the best thing was to tighten up the whole system. Get as many cows as we can calved in 6 weeks, but calve them later and calve them closer to the grass. Um, so like there's very little room for error when you're doing it. So you need to be on the ball, I suppose, with breeding and having the cow right for breeding so that she will go and calf as back and calf as soon as possible. I suppose so for us, the one thing we kind of watch really is I suppose we look at the condition really of the cows, what they calve down, and we'd be watching the nutrition there, and like as Claire would probably tell you, like I've been known to feed the cow fairly well, like in the spring. A lot of it is due to the fact that I can't get out in time or get the grass into the cow, so I have to feed them well early on, and I suppose that kind of keeps the condition on them, and it just sets them up then for breeding. Like I said earlier, any cow that might have an issue, let's say a lame cow now or anything, like the minute we'd see her lame, like we'd bring her in, draft her straight away, and check her out. And we find if you do that early, like they seem to they'll come
It's
back.
only a bump on the road, really, like
Exactly,
as
like
opposed
whereas if
to a
you
major
leave it
downfall
drag
for 'em.
on, next thing you see her, she's starting to get thin, she's losing condition. So we do all the hoof pairing ourselves, because what you'd often see there is a farmer would be waiting for maybe a group of cows before he'd ring the hoof trimmer to come in, like, and like
Yeah.
you're losing weeks there. So, we just do that ourselves. And a lot of times, if you do it early, there's very little, you'll solve the problem very quickly yourself. Um, we keep an eye on any cows then as well that maybe had any difficult calvings or hen or retained the afterbirth or things like that. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what we'd be watching early on. Um, Other than that, then I suppose when it comes to breeding, then um, from now on, let's say we'd tail paint all the cows, so they're all tail painted red now at the moment, and all we're doing really is, other than maybe topping up the tail paint once a week or twice a week, we're just observing the cows. I keep a track of any cow that's in heat. And how we do that
And
is we have
yeah, explain that chart to
yeah,
people.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I make up this chart. So at the top of the chart it's week one, week two, week three, week four. So these are week one of calving, week two of calving, week three of calving, week four of calving, and so on, up until however many weeks the cows are calving. So under week one I write down all the list of cows that have all calved in week one. And then week two, we write down the list of cows that have calved in week two, week three, and so on. And then all I'm doing, once I see a cow cycling or in heat, I just put a line through her number. So come maybe the end of April there, be having a look at my chart and I'd see there's cows there that calved in week one. What's the story with them? They haven't come into heat yet. So it's very visual, rather
Mm.
than like I was putting it on my phone, and another time I used to have it in a notebook, but then you're flicking through the pages of the notebook and you're kind of, oh, this one bulling? Whereas when I have it up in the chart there, it's up on the wall. I can see all my cows. I can see straight away there must be something up here with these couple of cows that have calved 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever, and they still haven't shown a sign of heat. Like so, you're able to draft them out then fairly quickly, and check them out if they need any treatments or anything like that.
Okay, so just then we'll say just you're not starting AI until the 13th or 14th of May anyway, just so people are clear on that, I suppose, that are listening in. So you're already a week or so maybe of into tail paint, and you've more or less a month to go before you actually start breeding. So, like, how soon do you actually act on them then, like we'll say? So, if you have cows that you've seen in the last week now that are calved, 6 or 8 weeks already and haven't been in heat, are you going to move on them now, or do you wait until kind of maybe a week ahead of breeding, or when do you actually start your intervention? And I suppose the second question is then, and it's something that I would meet and possibly Claire you're meeting as well, is where the 6 week calving rate is good. People are inclined, maybe less inclined to do this kind of pre-breeding work because they're kind of like saying time will start it, and time is definitely a healer. There's no doubt about that. You talk to lads that buy cull cows will say, or that haven't come bulling and so forth, and some of these guys that run them on themselves, those cows actually do come back into heat eventually. But because of the seasonal nature of Irish systems, we need them to come cycling in a shorter space of time. So explain, even though you've 97% calved in 6 weeks, you're still following through in terms of making sure that these cows are all fit for breeding come the 13th or 14th, or as many of them as possible are fit for breeding on the 13th or 14th. So just explain that, if you can, as to why you do it. And as I said,
Yeah.
so many people, so many other people just kind of don't feel the need to nearly do it. Like,
Yes, for me, it's kind of like the fear factor that I don't want any cow calving in May or even late April, um, and that's why I like that to at least have the cow cycling once before I breed her. So, you're asking there about when do I start intervention? So, like for the whole month of April, there I'd probably just keep an eye on everything. I just observe everything and give the cow that bit of time, like. The one cows I'd really watch is the ones that might have had, the cow that had the milk fever, the cow that held the afterbirth for a bit longer than she should. Um, those when I possibly would intervene a bit earlier, but um, generally if you can get the cow cycling once, it's as good as intervening. They kind of clean themselves out as such, like. Um, so let's say for the month of April, just keep an eye on them, and probably end of April then I'll be drafting out the few cows that, especially the ones now in week 1 to 4 that have calved and I haven't seen them in heat. So usually what I do is, unless I see something off or something like that, I just might give them a shot of PG and see will they come in themselves, and give them a shot again. If they don't, then give them a shot again in 10 days, and just and then it's kind of lining up then for when I'm starting breeding, like. So they'll possibly could come in then on the 10th, between the 10th and 13th of May there, when I'd be kind of starting breeding the cows. Um, but other than that, like last year, I didn't have the vet out now for to check out the cows. As far as I can remember, I think I just worked away with giving them a shot of PG, anyone that I hadn't seen come in, and they generally all came in. Um, and the same thing with the chart then as well. Once I have that cow crossed off in the chart, when I breed her, then I shade out the box completely of the cow's number, so I know that cow is bred.
okay,
And then after 3 weeks, I can say, okay, all these boxes are shaded here. How come this cow, she came bulling um, whenever
she's not after being bred,
and
like, yeah,
the 3 weeks are up. I have 3 weeks of eye. How come? What's the story with her? No, she didn't. Was it a silent E or whatever? And then draft her in again, and you know maybe a shot of PG or something, or you might have to get the vet out at that stage. Like, so often you can find that they would come. You might have seen them cycling, and then you could have 3 weeks done, and they haven't come in again for some reason. It's whether you missed it yourself, or is there something else up. So
yeah,
once again, like, the chart is there and it's just visual, and you can see the box are shaded now. So um like that, it makes it very, very easy then to pick out the cows that aren't cycling. And I find that, it really keeps you kind of focused then that, right, I need to do something. The 3 weeks are nearly up now, and these cows, there's a list of cows here, still haven't come in. I need to do something about these cows, like. So rather than flicking through your phone, I think the visual aspect for me anyway seems to work very well.
yeah. No, it sounds like a great idea actually, and the follow up of the breeding of them as well, subsequent to actually having them shown heat is good, because obviously there are cows, as you said there, that will show an early heat maybe, and then for maybe just from sheer milk load that they're producing or whatever, they just don't show heat for a little while longer maybe or whatever, and you're very aware of it and keeping an eye on that the whole time. So I suppose Claire, just I'll come to you now for a minute. just across the farmers that you're dealing with in the program along with Pa, what's their experience in terms of they all have generally good 6 week calving rates as well, similar to Pa, maybe not as good as Pa's now, but fairly close to it at the same time. A bit of a variation, as I said, in terms of what people are doing and aren't doing in terms of pre-breeding.
Yeah, Stuart. So I suppose if we look across the group of the demonstration farmers there, like the group average last year was 85% 6 week calving rate. So it is a strong 6 week calving rate across the group. I suppose if we were to look at what's some of the different things the farmers within the group are doing, look, there is synchronization of heifers going on, as Pa said, that probably brings in the compactness a bit into it. I suppose we were on Micheál Cavanagh's this week as part of the discussion group, and look, Micheál has all his cows tail painted at the moment, and I suppose similar to Pa, he's monitoring heats and seeing what's coming in and what's not bulling or what's not coming bulling as well. I suppose Micheál has a few late calvers left in the shed, and the plan for those on his farm specifically was to come in with a PRID program to try and bring those 10 cows back into the system a bit quicker. So hopefully that they'll calve on time next year, or make up a little bit of time without going too late. I suppose some of the other farmers, if we were to look at maybe Stephen McAuliffe there in Lahal, he had metri checked his cows a week ago. So he'd gone through each of the cows and identified any cows that were still a small bit dirty after calving. And then he had the vet come into the yard to check those cows that still hadn't cleaned. The vet came into the yard a week later. So as you were saying there, some of those cows had actually cleared themselves in that week period, so they'd come clean themselves. So, and then I suppose the vet went through the cows that were I suppose still dirty, and I suppose they went on to treatment programs to try and make sure they get cycling before we come into the breeding season. So I suppose just a variation there of what people are doing, and similar to Pa, I think a lot of the guys are tail painting and picking up heats that way before starting breeding.
Yeah, so Pa, I suppose, how important do you feel it is in terms of actually following through? Like you said, it's the fear factor, but so if you met somebody and you're asking them, or they said to you, I don't bother with that pre-breeding, what would you say to them? Like, Jesus, would you not be scared of your life that they'd slip? Or what would you say? Like,
Yeah, like I suppose for me, like I think just tis like you're running a business, and the whole aim of the business is to make money. Like, so any cow that's going late, like is late calving, like she's costing you money straight away. Like, um, so for me, like I just because I'm calving that bit later, I'm starting that bit later calving. Like I'm kind of on the back foot earlier on, so I need to play. I'm playing catch up with some lads that are calving that bit earlier, but like I'd often pass them out. You know, there's you'd be talking to farmers and they might have a certain amount of calves, and next thing I could have over 50% calved, and they'd be on 50 as well. So like the whole thing is for me is that you know calve them as compactly as you can and get them all out to grass. Then when the grass is growing, and ready to take off, and that your cow then is not going to drop in protein or in percentages, as much as this is if you're calving early and if they're stuck inside a long time. Um, but tis I suppose the whole issue for me is that I'm running a farm business. Like this is my livelihood, and I have to pay the bills. I need to make money, to pay all my bills, and so like I need cows milking and getting the milk into the tanks. So I
you're
think
like the Ker you're like the
sorry.
Kerry manager, you can't afford to carry passengers.
I can't, it's exactly it. You can't afford to carry passengers, exactly, that if there's any cow holding me back, I'm afraid now that we have to have the talk of to drop her off the panel. So, but like that, yeah, there's kind of no room for, like, she's my favorite cow. I need, I'd like to see her going back in calf again. Like, I, there's
But
kind
you
of
don't
no
let
room.
her get to that though, Pa, like,
No, you can't. Yeah, you can't. Like, and
yeah.
I've like if the cow is not going back in calf early for you, like, is she your best cow? Then, like, you're not getting the most out of her. So, that's where I be coming at it.
Yeah, so I suppose it's interesting in a way, Pa, in a way, like pre-breeding, in kind of general terms, people probably do think about the vet coming in and seeing after doing the prid programs, as Claire has pointed out there. But a lot of your work, you're actually doing a lot of work early on to generate the outcomes that you're getting, really, like, so your mineral status right, you're watching the body condition all the way through calving, you're kind of observing, taking notes through calving as well. So when you actually get to the end or to get to this point where we're kind of in these couple of weeks, you actually probably don't have a huge number of cows that you end up doing anything with anyway, do you?
I generally don't. No, you would have a handful, but um, I remember, I think, was it 2 years ago? I remember I had maybe a certain number of cows, and I was going sinking to heifers, and I just said to the vet, "Look, I have a certain number." This maybe might have been a week beforehand. I had a certain number of cows. I said, I need to check before, whenever you come out to sink the heifers, and he said he would. But by the time he came out, a lot of those cows had come in themselves that time. Like, I'd say about 50% of them. So yeah, if you do it's like anything. If you do the groundwork early and kind of set your stall out early, that it makes things, you know, um, it makes things easier as you go along. But it's from mistakes now that I've learned as well. And I remember one year there, now I had cows out, and there was a few of them got lame, maybe first calvers, and I kind of left them. I didn't treat them when I saw them. They might have went a week, and it set me back. So now I learned that, right, there's a cow lame, she needs to get looked after straight away. Um, any of those issues, you just need to hit them. Like, once you see them, there's no hanging about. Just go ahead and treat them straight away. Um, but yeah, if you just do act early, I think, and the cow then kind of she kind of looks after herself. I'm giving her that bit time now for the month of April to see will she come back cycling. And she's getting that 4 weeks off there. Well, as in that I'm not going to go near her and just leave her to her own devices, and then hopefully that she'll come back cycling. If she doesn't, then I'd intervene, but I try not to intervene, a whole lot.
Try and leave nature on its course as much
Yeah,
as
yeah,
possible,
yeah.
like,
If I
but just
can, if
just
I can,
keeping track at the same time, like.
but keeping track, keeping
Yeah.
an eye on things, kind of just observing really,
Okay.
and just keeping an eye on things, and then when you need to act, you need to, do it swiftly. Then,
Yeah. Claire, just coming back to the group then as a whole, any lessons learned, I suppose, from spring 2025? As you said earlier, good 6 week calving rate, and more than likely when the numbers will be done again for this year, they're going to be up in the same region again. So the challenges maybe that brings, Pa, you mentioned it earlier when we were getting ready about the workload associated with it and having help. But are there any other issues, maybe, Claire, around that high 6 week calving rate at farm level then as well, other than the requirement for lots of space, I suppose, for calves and for calving, and for plenty of available help if possible as well?
Yeah, Stuart, and I think Pat kind of touched on it earlier as well. That 6 week calving rate being a key performance indicator, I suppose it's there for a reason, that it has a major influence on the farm's capability of producing large volumes of milk solids. And as Pat's doing on his farm there, matching that with the peak, coming into the peak grass growth period onto the farm as well. So I suppose like that you're optimizing that so that you can try and get cows out to grass and try and produce milk as cheaply as possible off of that. I suppose the challenges that maybe we saw across the group were slightly different this spring compared to last spring, in that we had generally very good ground conditions across the catchment area of the farmers. I suppose the major challenge came in that, maybe as an effect of the poor spring that was there last year and the good back end of last year as well, that farmers kept grazing a bit more. And I suppose the group opened with an average farm cover of grass of just shy of 760 kg of dry matters per hectare across the farms. That was the average, and that was 180 kg of dry matter less compared to 2024. So I suppose that was one of the major challenges, in that the farmers, with the compact calving, there was a lot of demand to go out to grass straight away when the ground conditions were there, and I suppose that put pressure on grass definitely for the first rotation. So I think the lesson possibly to learn there in terms of the opening covers were lower than they should have been. And it did put pressure on trying to stretch grass out to get it into the second round of grazing. Now look, the farmers managed well in that they had to feed more ration where they had to, and they had to put cows back in at night. Some cases where they really didn't want to, but they had no choice, because if they had kept grazing, they would have pushed the farm cover too low, and they would have ended up in a bit of a tailspin where they wouldn't have had enough grass to open or come into the second round. So I suppose the big key learning point there definitely would be that with that compact calving on the farms, you do need to have that grass available for you come into the spring to be able to get through that first rotation grass. Now, look, the weather has definitely played a big factor in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that the covers have recovered greatly, and there is good growth rates now across the farm. The average farm cover across the group now is 740, and growth is coming in at 43 this week. So, it's coming into a good, strong position to come into the second round of grazing, and I suppose that's all leading on then to, I suppose, good nutrition coming in towards the breeding season as well across the group. So, yeah, I suppose the big key point, I think the group would agree as well, that the amount of grass has to be there to be able to carry that 6-week calving rate.
Yeah, so I suppose, Pal, we'll pick up on a point that you made there. You were saying Claire probably be giving out there or be conscious of the amount of feeding that you're doing there in the springtime, but I don't think that's actually the reason that she's giving out to you. Claire is pro feeding the cow and making sure the cow is well fed, but is what you're feeding them maybe is probably what she's challenging you on.
Maybe. Yeah, so like it did happen to me last year, like, in that I did probably graze on that bit later. And it was all because of the weather. The autumn came so good. Like, there was a temptation there to graze on, and I was easily tempted. So
There was no pulley up the handbrake to stop.
no, like, and I kind of closed. I think, what was it, around 500 cover I closed with, and I didn't open then. Like, I suppose because my farm, it is open to the north. I suppose kind of the northeast, and you get that cold weather, and the soil type would be to be I suppose, to be a heavy enough soil, but to be a clay type soil, which takes a long time to warm up. But when it does warm up, it will grow grass. But the spring this year with the cold, there was a lot of cold nights there. We had the snow, and that set everything back as well. So I opened up with a 600 cover then, and like that. When they did go out, like, generally once I go out by day, maybe I try and get them out by night, relatively quick as well. But I got the warning from Claire. No, I need to
Don't you dare.
don't, yeah. So she was like, if you go under the 500, you're going to be in trouble. So I had to hold them for a good 3 weeks there, and just slow them down, and that's why I brought in the palm kernel as well. I find that kind of helped just to keep the solids up when you're on the silage. I find that good. And they were on 6 kg of meal as well on top of that, like. So yeah, but once they gone down full time, then the silage and the palm kernel went, and they're just on the ration then in the parlour. But yeah, it's one thing you just have to watch, I suppose, going forward. I suppose for me, it's hard to know as well, like, because I wouldn't. Let's say year on year, you might get the cows out in February maybe for a couple of days, maybe a week if you're lucky, and then they'd go back in again because the weather places would get too wet. Like in 2024, because the spring was so bad, like, I ended up running out of silage. Um, and I had to have the cows out, and I did a lot of damage then to the ground. And then the next round was very slow coming because I did a lot of damage, so there was a knock-on effect even throughout the year. Um, so for me, even getting the advice from Claire, just to slow down, I was in no rush this year I had in my head that, look, unless the weather is fairly right, the cows won't be going out. I'm not going to make the same mistake as 2024 and do damage in the spring and then be paying for it for the year. So I brought in my palm kernel early, I had it in the shade, and then once the cows started calving, then, and once I started getting them out, when I got them out by day, I was giving them the palm kernel then as well, just to keep them going.
So you'll for 2026 you'll have it all right, Pavel, yeah?
I don't know, every year you're learning, like, so
Yeah,
you think you're just on top of things, and then you get thrown another curveball. But sure, yeah,
but
we're getting there every year. We're getting there. So who knows
yes.
what 2026 is going to bring?
Uh,
Um,
l- Look, we better wrap it up with that. A big thank you to you for coming on, and I wish yourself and Paula the best for the year ahead. And Claire, thank you for your assistance as well with doing this today. So, wish you all the best, and we'll talk again.
Thanks very much, Stuart.
That's all for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Pa and Claire for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. You can also email us at dairyedge.podcast@teagasc.ie. I'm Stuart Childs, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.